So let's continue this. That these cartilaginous joints are basically made up of this hyaline cartilage or fibrocartilage, or you can say they are made up of white fibrous cartilage. Now let's see the position of this cartilaginous joint. Basically they are present in the vertebral column. You can see as over here. This vertebral disc is basically you can see over the vertebrae. This is also vertebrae, but in the mid this is a white fibrous connective tissue. This is a white fibrous connective tissue over here, or you can see over here here in the bone, this epiphyseal plate in this is the hyaline cartilage, or basically in our pectoral pelvic girdle, this pubic symphysis, which is basically joining the two pubic bones, this is basically known as pubic symphysis, is also made up of white fibrous cartilage. Basically in this there is slight movement in this. Now second thing is synovial joint. Most of the joints in skeletal system are synovial due to their free movability. These are more complex than other joints in structure. Synovial joint generally consists of a joint capsule and a synovial membrane that secretes synovial fluid. The joint capsule holds together the bones and encloses the outer part of joint. The inner membrane of capsule is few cell thick, covers a surface within the joint capsule called the synovial membrane. Synovial membrane surrounds a closed sac called synovial cavity and secretes synovial fluid to fill this cavity. Synovial fluid lubricate and nourish the articulating cartilage surface within the joint. There are different types of synovial joint present in our body. Hinge joint, present in between the humerus and the ulna bones, allowing flexion and extension in just one plane. Humerus and ulna. Basically this is hinge joint, and when we talk about hinge joint, in hinge joint we have 90-degree movement. So it is basically located in the elbow, and elbow joint is basically this hinge joint. Moreover, this knee joint is this hinge joint which can move in 90-degree. Moreover, interphalangeal basically between your phalanges, this 90-degree movement is possible, so that is also a hinge joint. Now, and distal radio-ulnar joint now pivot joint present in proximal and distal radio-ulnar joint, allowing twisting movement. Basically in this pivot joint is present in your skull as well. Basically where we have this foramen magnum and the vertebral column is fixed, and that is basically because inoculated in that vertebral column. This vertebral column is inoculated in the skull. That is basically a pivot joint. There is a certain pivot joint present in proximal and distal radio-ulnar joint, allows twisting movement. Okay. Ball and socket joint of shoulder and hips move the organ in all direction. Condyloid joint is a modified but structurally different ball and socket joint that allows movement in all directions. For example, wrist joint, radiocarpal joint. Gliding joint is also called a plane joint. Okay, basically what is gliding joint? You cannot see the movement of gliding joint. It is present between your carpals and between your tarsals, right? Then we have, it only permits limited movement like bending and slipping one bone over to another. For example, wrist and vertebral column. Yes, this condyloid joint is basically present between the condyles of your skull and the first vertebrae. Here this condyloid joint is present. It is a type of ball and socket, but ball and socket provides the free relaxation. You can move really freely, but in condyloid there is movement. Yes, no movement is basically condyloid movement. This condyloid this condyloid is basically the yes movement. Now, what is a gliding joint? Gliding joint is something when two bones are gliding over each other. Here you can see the example of this manubrium and the clavicle. Okay, yes, this is also example of gliding joint. Then we have this hinge joint, basically the 90 degree. You can see over here there's a 90-degree angle, so this is also a hinge joint. Then we have pivot joint. Yes, as I said, this pivot joint is basically between this atlas and this axis. This is a pivot joint. Ellipsoidal joint. What is this now? Okay, we have this saddle joint. Okay, yeah, this saddle joint is basically between, okay, you can see the thumb can move freely. It can touch all your fingers. So the saddle joint is between the carpal and the metacarpal of thumb. This saddle joint. Right, now here we have ball and socket joint that everyone knows, right? So I hope this is clear to you. If you have any kind of queries, you can ask me in the comment section. I'll be very glad to answer you guys.